Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Reputation Igniter podcast. We are so excited for you to be here. As always, hit the like and subscribe button, turn on those notifications so you don't miss another interview with an industry expert and a leader. Today, I'm really excited. We've got Roland Arrisola of Stan's Heating and Air, as well as the president of TACCA with us. So, Roland, thanks for being here.
Hey, Chris, appreciate you having me.
Hey, my pleasure. And I am really excited about what Roland is going to share because he is going to give an insight, I think, to a often under or overlooked organization within our industry that can have an amazing and incredible power for you and your business locally. And so I've asked him to come on and kind of share that. And as you know, we are always trying to help bring you guys insights and resources to help you elevate your HVAC business and keep our industry on the up and up and continuing to grow. Although we're going to continue to have that demand naturally, we also want to be encouraging people in our community to be engaging with our businesses, because you guys are all doing such great things out there. So with that, the reason I brought Roland on is, number one, he's been with Stan's Heating and Air for 30 plus years, right? I know I can speak as a millennial. You know, if you're anywhere for more than 3 years, it's like, man, why you been at that job so long, right? So the idea that he's stuck around for 30 plus years, I want him to kind of give us some insight as to why and how that kind of came about. But along with that, he's chosen to invest a considerable amount of his time and his life in an organization called TACCA, which everybody knows, I think, hopefully, is the Texas, air conditioning Contractors Association. And there's ACCA, right, which is the larger sort of national one. I'm going to have you kind of break that down a little bit for us. But the idea is these guys are doing great things in our local community, and they're really going to bat for our industry and making sure that we all have a strong, stable, vibrant livelihood ahead of us. And one of the things, and maybe this is kind of where we kick things off, Roland, is that, my generation, the millennials, like we're not necessarily engaging with these associations like we probably should be. I think we're a little bit too distracted by, all the sexy marketing that's out there. And I get it, that's kind of my world, and things are changing and AI is revolutionizing everything. But Roland, I think one of the things that strikes me about you is just you're a hard guy not to want to be a friend of, because you're just so inviting and affable and warm and inviting. So, the importance of building that relationship. Why would you say that, maybe we're talking to the younger audience here, like why, maybe you just started your business, right? Or maybe you've been in it a few years, or you're looking to kind of take over something. Why do you think it's important to be engaged in an organization or association like TACCA? And maybe on top of that, you can kind of explain some of the things that TACCA does that directly impact somebody who is owning an HVAC company.
So just real quickly too, I just want to say something. It's 32 years in the business, 30 years with Stan's. So,
sorry, that's right.
Just to clarify, no problem. TACCA, the Texas Air Contractors Association, back when I was a technician or I was a salesman or, just came in, did my job, right? And I did, of course, cared all about the Stan's name, right? And what I did for it, but I never really realized what Stan was doing. I knew about, and when I talk about Stan Johnson Jr., who was the second owner of Stan's, his dad started it in 1954, but he took it over in late 80s. And then he was always a big advocate for ACCA. TACCA was a little bit after that it switched to the TACCA side of things, which is the Texas Air Conditioning Contractors, not the national side, which is the Air Conditioning Contractor Association. ACCA, it normally deals with all of our big national issues, that are coming up, or bills that are trying to be passed on the national side. Whenever it's just Texas stuff, that's where TACCA comes in, and that's what I'm part of. Also, we're members of ACCA. We do both, but TACCA is what is my back door. That's what I have to deal with. And that's what I, put all my time and efforts that I have to make sure that our industry here in Texas is being taken care of, that the contractors are being protected from the legislative side of things. Whenever you got folks that are trying to come in and, pass certain laws that, we don't want. We want licensed contractors to stay here. We don't want what we had heard in the past not too long ago that, hey, if you do your job right, why do you have to have a license? Well, no. We in Texas, you got to be a licensed contractor, and we want to protect those guys that have done that, went all the way and got their license, started a company, and may not understand that on the backside we see a lot of there's a lot of things that happen all of a sudden, like just recently in the last couple of years, the NEC, the National Electrical Code, had passed. Yep. We were supposed to have put GFIs on all outdoor equipment. Well, because of our variable capacity two-stage equipment, you can't do that. It's nuisance trips. It's just going to keep on tripping equipment. So as soon as we saw that and we asked the city, hey, what's this about this code? And they didn't know about it yet. And then the city of Austin said, well, I tell you what, if it's in the code book, you have to abide by it by this time. So, we got TDLR involved. Luckily that I was on the seat of TACCA. So we got TACCA involved. We've got TDLR. Like within 2 weeks, we were able to turn things around in Texas to where that code was held back. We went all the way to ACCA and got ACCA to help us as well. And then they've actually have taken that out of the code book. So at this point, up to a certain date, I think it's 26, that we don't have to worry about it. So, those are some big things that show that TACCA does take care of the contractor. There's been several things in the past. There was a time when AT&T was trying to come in and put in thermostats, and we got involved with that, and X'd it. There's just things that not everybody knows what happens on in the back end. That there's folks out there like myself, because there's a lot of contractors that are involved with TACCA. There's 18 of us at the board that has associates as well, that we meet every quarter. Every quarter. And we talk about, what can we do for membership? What can we do if there's a certain bill that Shannon Noble, our lobbyist, brings up and tells us? She's always following everything that's going on with bills that are trying to be passed. There's numerous things that if you didn't know as a contractor, it is mind-boggling if you've never sat in a legislative session to listen to what you have to do as a association to have them listen to you. There's dues we got to pay. There's PAC money that's got to be, even though there's membership meetings that we have, and we talk about PAC money and we talk about this. If you didn't know what that money was for, it's money that we use to fight to protect us. And if you don't have any money, you have no voice. So those are things that we have, everybody that's a licensed contractor, 17,000 licensed contractors in Texas. But when you look at TACCA, we're about 400 members. Wow. So, we're nowhere close to where we should have, right now we should be one of the biggest memberships that there are.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think it's just that a lot of folks don't know. They just don't know. There's a lot of new, younger, like you said, contractors out there that just don't know that money for the membership, which is, you throw that away on a weekend for the membership, that actually goes a long way to protect the industry you make a living on.
So Roland, I think there's an important thing like that you were talking about there is, I think especially today, maybe this I'm appealing to my generation here, is that like I think we feel so powerless sometimes against government, and like we don't have a say and there's no way, right? And I think most of us are probably just keeping our head down, doing a hard day's work to get the job done, feed our families, feed our employees' families, right? So like I think, and then you can run up against a code issue, right? Or worse off, like you don't know about a code issue. You're installing for a year, maybe a year and a half, and then somebody finally calls you out, right? And then you got to go back and do all the rework, or maybe there's a lawsuit that comes against you, right? You could lose a lot, right? And it's just, you're trying to do the right thing the best that you know how. So it's important, like you said, to be part of an association. Number one, to be able to have your ear to the ground, right? And like you guys are constantly, feeding and pushing information. I think also, like you said, if we had all 17,000 of the contractors here in the state of Texas involved in that group, could you imagine what you guys could get done in Congress? I think it's pretty crazy, right? And And so on top of that, right, you've got a very well seasoned lawyer. I know Shannon Noble's, she's great in what she's able to accomplish with you guys. She knows our industry like inside and out, right? So this isn't like some divorce lawyer who's just doing some pro bono work on the side, kind of helping out Roland and his friends, right? This is a legit, this is what she does. She knows how Congress works. So I think that's an important piece. But then I think the other piece is like, guys, if we had more than 400, that's more ears on the ground in all these different locations, right? To be feeding information back to TACCA so that we can do a better job of regulating it here in Texas, right? But and then maybe you, Roland, you could talk about the fact that, like, there's chapters, right? So that, like, I think is sometimes you can be like, well, it's just a national thing, and that just they're two separate, right? But I think there's local chapters, like not just in Texas, but in all other regions that you can be involved in. And so maybe talk about, like, because this is maybe a holdup, right? Like what is usually the expectation, or what is what does involvement look like? Because maybe people are worried that it's like a whole bunch of time or something like that, or maybe you can kind of like, let's lower that barrier so people know that, like, hey, yes, pay your dues, but here are some other sort of like benefits to typically being part of an organization like TACCA that you can kind of maybe highlight that somebody hadn't thought about. Obviously the lobbying in Congress is really important, but what are some of the other, like, boots on the grounds or helping their employees that maybe is involved?
So, like, for the guys that are just starting out, right? Like, just yesterday we had our luncheon for the Austin chapter, and at the Austin chapter they had Podium there. So Podium is all about Google reviews, credit card payment. They have where you can get down to like 2.5%. Just all these benefits that most folks don't know that you could have, and especially when you're just starting out. What does it matter about a Google review? Well, I mean, nowadays those Google reviews are worth some money. It really helps out. So, and that's small stuff, because we even have all the way from insurance benefits that we bring in, like JB warranties, or we'll bring in Federated Insurance, who's a real big insurance advocate for us, who's also a member, and they can get all the way down to, like, I want to say 2 employees, and they can still insure a company that small, and all the way up to companies that are 250 to 300 employees. So there's a lot of value that TACCA brings to the contractor. But, and you're right, I mean, we do ask for, when you have the membership, that we have every first Tuesday of the month, that we have a luncheon, a dinner, or whatever. We're trying to figure out what's going to be the best thing, what's going to make our younger crowd come in as well. Like you said, the younger generation that normally wants to see something on a Zoom video, or wants to, what I'm talking about, doesn't always come into the meetings because they don't know what they're going to get into. But what I have found in the guys that are sitting next to me, because we talk, and even though that we're competitors, it's like, hey, how's the carrier equipment doing for you? Or how's the Linux equipment doing for you? Oh, well, actually, we're having an issue with them right now because of this or that, might be a supply chain issue. Oh, really? Well, I have some of those in stock. Like on the state side, that happened during the COVID time and everything. Is, there were some folks that were saying, hey, I can't find this train system, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I got a couple of them. We help each other out. So that type of stuff is another big value when you're a member of TACCA.
Yeah. Well, and I think, like you're talking about, right? There's a closer relationship, a brotherhood, a friendship, right? I mean, yes, we're all fighting to grow our businesses and stuff like that, but we're we don't want to bloody the water, right? And I think, especially as we're maybe heading into a recession here, right? I think it's more important to be locking arms and thinking collaboratively. One of the things I love about being a Texan, right? But like you're talking about, having those resources, having other things to lean on, that's going to make the fly-by-nights, the chucks in the truck, the people that are kind of constantly kind of coming in to our industry, which is just a natural sort of flow of the different sort of economic cycles, right? It almost, I think, if we can together raise the standard of our industry, right? The person who wants, the handyman who wants to make a quick buck and thinks he can put in an HVAC system. Well, if he's competing with an industry that we've established as one of high standards, right? and does good quality craftsmanship. And, people are starting to look for, that maybe that TACCA label, right, or the PHCC label on a website of one of our guys. It's going to require them to kind of, pay to play at a higher level, and most won't do it, right? So in a way, we're kind of flushing out, those kind of people. And so I think that's a really powerful, opportunity for us to kind of elevate our industry for sure. What, let's say that, somebody wanted to, get involved. What would that look like? Or maybe what would be a best practice if somebody was trying to get involved with an association like this? Like what are some of the things that one should think about, so that maybe they don't bite off more than they can chew, and they do it at like a sustainable level, for the long term, I guess.
I would tell you that, go to your local chapter first. Go to your local chapter. They're not going to tell you can't come in, even though you're not a member. After about 4 meetings, they're probably going to ask you, hey, would you like to become a member? And, that type of thing. But, come out, see the value, see what we do at our meetings, see the camaraderie and being able to speak to other contractors that can kind of tell you and answer questions that you may have because you haven't done it or you're not sure about it. Then from there, you would look at your local level to see if they have some open seats, because every year, the secretary, treasurer, vice president, president, and ex officio, they move up every year. So there's always an open seat. And we're always looking for contractors, and it's got to be a contractor that's on the executive boards. So the associates, which are your manufacturers, your distributors, they can be on the board. They just can't be the executive board, because it's all about the contractor. And the contractors are the only ones that are the true the true board members that are on the seats that are secretary, treasurer, president, vice president, and treasurer, ex officio. So you got to be a contractor.
Gotcha.
And I would tell you that's when, the local chapters, you can always come in, you can talk to them, you can even come to a meeting and just sit there and, listen to what we do in a meeting, and just figure out, is this something that you want to do? Because like you said earlier, Chris, that, we all have a voice, right? But when it's just us talking, we're having to yell for people to listen to us. But if 17,000 of us got together and talked about issues, man, we could move mountains.
I love that. One of the things I was just thinking about is like an inadvertent resource. If you're smart enough to utilize it, right, with something like that, is again, anybody that's, part of an organization like that is kind of self-selecting, right? They're showing that, it's not just about making a buck, right? It is about the industry as a whole. They obviously have good work standards because they wouldn't want to show their face in a public, room of some of the movers and the shakers in our industry, right? In a local area. And so in a way, right, I was just thinking, like, if you're just getting started, the reason it might be worth, whatever it is, the $500 or so, a year, just a year, right, to be a part of that is like, most of these mastermind groups or like a consultant or whatever in the industry, I mean, that will run you minimum $500 a month, but most likely it's more to like the 1,000 to the 1,500. I mean, I think, and I'm not trying to monopolize Roland's time or volunteer it, but, I guarantee if you showed up a few times and you showed up that you were a good quality person, that Roland would probably give you a cell phone number, and you could probably call Roland and tap into his 30 years of experience, moving up to the ranks, it stands, and then also now being an owner, right? So like he's got the viewpoint and the perspective of all those different roles. I mean, would you say that most people in that group are probably a pretty open book when it comes to like, hey, how did you get from point A to point B where I want to get, that might be helpful for a younger member?
Absolutely. I've got, being the president, this year for TACCA, of course, everybody has my cell number that's a member, and my email. And I have spoken to people all over Texas, from up north, down south, east, west. I get phone calls. Sometimes they call the state side and they're having some questions about a code, and they turn it over to me, and I talk to them. And, it's just a contractor to a contractor. That's, there's nothing, I'm no different than the other guy.
Yeah. Right. Well, I think that might be also the piece too, right? If maybe if you're like, struggling with a mindset thing, like I think getting around just like regular people who are just, doing what it takes, to build a good business, that I think you also realize you're not as far off as you think, right? And sometimes it's just a couple of like key tweaks. Maybe it's a couple of hires, maybe it's an adjustment to culture, maybe it's leveraging a couple of technology tools as well. I think that can be pretty helpful. What I think one of the things we were talking about is there's also some additional like incentives, like I think you were talking about like JV warranty and federated insurance. And so what you're saying is that you guys have better purchasing power with some of these bigger entities because you come together as a group. And how does that maybe benefit a member in that realm?
So normally what happens is they, like your federated, your JV warranties, they have membership or not membership, but they have pricing for members and non-members. So there is always a benefit to be a member because you'll get it for a little bit cheaper.
Right.
And then there's like Service Nation. Service Nation is a group that if wherever you purchase from, they normally can get you some type of rebate quarterly. And a lot of times that rebate pays for the TACCA membership as well as a Service Nation membership, depending on how big your organization is and how much you buy.
Yeah. I was actually talking to Jim Hinshaw last night about that, right? And I was like, man, I don't understand why more people don't just like, I mean, if something's going to pay you, why wouldn't you spend money on it, right?
Absolutely.
But I mean, I get it, right? You see $1,000 go out the door, you see $500 go out the door, you kind of go, oh, am I really making it worth it? And I think you just gotta realize, I mean, hopefully you're getting around good people, right? And you can trust who they are. And I mean, yes, our industry is riff with a lot of people that kind of come in and try and make a quick buck, but they never stick around. And so I think you look around somebody that's something that's been around for 10 years plus, I think you can probably be rest assured, because we typically tend to run people out of town that don't live up to their word, right? So what maybe you can talk to the fact of like what are if you're starting out new, what are some other benefits? Because I think you were talking about, like, tell me maybe about the continuing education credits, or I know there's parts in our industry, right? Like you got to keep up with, I mean, our industry is changing radically, right? You got to keep up with this stuff. I know we have to do CEs, continuing education stuff, right? So maybe talk through like that and what are some of the options, right? Like obviously TACCA, and then maybe talk about the benefits, but what are the other options that somebody can do, and what does that look like versus maybe potentially going through an organization like yourself?
So starting from the beginning, let's say you're a technician who has gone through the ranks and have been doing this for several years, and you thought about getting your license. Well, TACCA, we have a prep course, and then everything it right now that prep course has probably got the best ratings for passing after you've gone through the TACCA course. Not just that, but the books, you get a discount on the books. So from the class with a discount, the books with a discount, and should be able to go in and pass your test and become a licensed contractor is pretty easy. That's a big benefit. Once you already are a license holder and you are a member of TACCA, your continuous education, if you want to come in, then you have a discounted rate to come in and sit for an 8-hour course, or you can do it online. And actually, I'm sorry, to come in is free because you're taking a Saturday or whatever the day is that we're having the course. You get to come in for free and get the continuous education. To do it online, it'll be like a $49, online, because you can do it anytime you want. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So like there's some benefits there for sure. Let's
Let me add one more thing. If you're as a member like Stan's, we have like 8 or 9 license holders here. I'm the license holder that is on the side of our trucks and everything, but we've got several other guys that have gotten their license. Their continuous education, because I'm a member of TACCA, it's all of Stan's. It's not just me. So all the guys that are license holders, they all have the same benefit that I do, to be able to go in and have your continuous education done by free, at no cost.
Gotcha.
So it doesn't matter how many license holders you have in your company. If you're a TACCA member, the entire company is a TACCA member.
Okay. I mean, that's pretty awesome that, you know, the whole organization gets that. What, let's say that you're, you know, you're a new guy, I mean, let's say you're thinking about it, like you said, you can plug into, you know, one of these license, you know, prep programs, right, to get your license. And then let's say that you get your license, you know, what would you say might be the first like good thing to do with TACCA? Like, I mean, you know, that somebody would really start to reap some benefits for their business. What would maybe be the first couple of steps that, you know, if you were going back, right? Let's go
Yeah.
back, you know, 30 years, and you know what you know now. What would you have gone back, and what would you do maybe over the course of your time as a member? What are some of the things that you feel like you would be tapping into? Maybe some lesser known secrets, you know, other than maybe what we've talked about.
I would have been a little more open than I was when I
Oh,
first came in,
okay.
because I was like, well, these are competitors. You know, I can't really say much to them. I'm just going to sit here and drink a little bit more. You know, it would have been more
Yeah.
paying attention and more talking to my peers and my friends that I
Uh-huh.
was not thinking were, you know, when I was thinking they were just my competitors, they were actually guys that all felt the same way, that hey, competition's okay as long as it's good competition, as long
Yeah.
as everybody's on the same board, the same mindset, that you're out there doing the right thing by code, with, you know, how do I say it, you're wanting to do the best and leaving your signature on every install that you do, on the technical side with your people, that they're taking care of the customer, and the customers always being handled the way they're supposed to. You know, from learning to knock on the door 2 steps back, wait till the customer
Mm-hmm.
comes in, or comes to the door and opens it, ask to be able to let in, not just walk on in, put your booties
Right.
on, you know, the whole professional side of listening to the consumer, and not just being the guy that thinks he knows it all.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Because like you said, there's so many of these little nuggets of wisdom that you can kind of pick up, that aren't on the forums, that aren't on the Facebook groups, right? That like, you know, just being around, or like you said, just asking an open-ended question of somebody can really let a lot of wisdom gush out, right? I think one of the things that I've found out over years and having mentors, you know, at different times around that, right, is like you'll hear something once and it won't really resonate, but you'll hear it later on a second time and you go, man, there is so much wisdom in what was said, right? And just the importance of making sure that you are keeping your ears open, like you said. And again, I think that just goes back to the fact that like this helps our whole industry elevate itself, because you know, those aren't necessarily, I mean, and I'm sure there's talks about pricing and all that kind of stuff if somebody's trying to move to like flat rate pricing or something, right? Like having
Yep.
understanding the mechanics of that's important, right?
Yep.
But I think more in general, it's if you're playing a different ball game, right? And so your business is going to operate in a different place. It's going to attract different customers, right? So, you know, just getting around people who obviously treat the industry differently, because you don't necessarily sit on the board of TACCA or you know, any of the subsequent, you know, like local chapters,
Yeah.
unless you're a reputable HVAC company that has a great reputation. And that's also a way to get your face and your name out there too, I think, to probably potentially secure some bigger partnerships, bigger relationships, you know, whether that's with the city or some of the bigger developers, right? I think your participation in these, you know, more publicly forward and facing, you know, things is a great way, like you said, to kind of open that door to maybe bigger projects if that's something you're interested in. Maybe we talk about this. We've been talking about the younger generation a lot, which, because I mean, you and I have a heart and a passion to kind of get more of the youth like involved in this, right? So that the
Yes.
trade continues on and continues to be strong and healthy. Maybe talk to the fact, I mean, because you know, you're no spring chicken, and that's not a dig on you, right? You got some gray in your beard for a reason. You earned that, right? But
A rooster.
maybe you rooster. There you go, right? Uh, is that, you know, why maybe let's say that, you know, maybe you're, you know, I'm in 40, right? So like, so let's say you're 40 or you're in your 50s, right? And maybe you've never been, you know, a member of TAC, or you're not interested. Maybe why might you give some thought to maybe joining the organization, like, quote unquote, this late in the game? What, there's got to be something that's in it, like for you from a legacy standpoint, like what kind of compels you to participate at the level that you're participating at, Roland?
So once you've been there and you've done the installation side, the service side, the sales side, and you come in and you make, people are always, they're there. How do I say it? So, the employees that every day are looking forward to you having a job,
Yeah.
after a while, I mean, and that's why we come to work, right? Because we have folks that rely on us. That's what I was looking for. That
Yeah.
rely on us to make sure they have a job. And after a while, it's like, well, what else can I do? Because I'm seeing that we're having issues with, 50 was kind of most of our when you start looking at the air conditioning business, 50 is about the age group that, we're a dying breed because there's not that many people wanting to come into our industry. We're starting to see that kind of change a little bit. I mean, starting to, going speaking with the schools and, being at the college levels here at ACC, talking to them. I do a lot of advocating with them and trying to push to let people know that, hey, it's not like, when my high school years where you better learn computers or you need to be an aviation mechanic or you need to do this and that, the trades were not talked about anymore. Then all of a sudden we started seeing that decline, that, oh my God, there's no younger folks wanting to do this job. Well, now that's changed. We're in the schools again. We're talking in the college sides. We're going to, TFCC Hutto. We're speaking with them, and we're trying to just get everybody that we can to understand that you can make 80 to 100 something thousand a year. Just all depends on how much you want to work, but working with your hands as a plumber, electrician, or an HVAC guy, you can make really good money. It's just, you got to come into our trade. And that was things that folks were not being told to come, that the trades can actually make good money as well. But I think that, I'm sorry, I went off on a little tangent there and probably lost my train of thought.
You're passionate.
The 50-year-old guy has a lot of, I'm not speaking of myself, a 50-year-old guy who has 32 years in the business. I have seen a lot. I've done a lot that wasn't good, but I corrected it. So I have a lot of information that I wanted to be able to put out there to people that wanted to listen. And that, I think that is what most of the members that are part of TACCA, that they are the same exact way. They have a voice. They see that there's some issues. They want to be able to give their input and see what they can do to help our industry get better.
Yeah. I think you hit on a lot of really good things. I mean, let's go with that last one that you were just talking about, right? Like, you've got a lot of experience. You've paid that tax, right? And I think, the most expensive mistake is when you make yourself, right? The cheapest mistake is one somebody else made and you get to learn from it, right? So again, kind of the idea of being able to tie into TACCA. I would also say this, and Roland, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine that the majority of people that are card-carrying members of TACCA probably do not engage with the leadership. And so, like you're saying, everybody's got your cell phone number, but you probably think about, like, what percentage actually contacts you. So again, that would be another encouragement, is like, Roland is probably standing by to take that call, and he would love that opportunity to, pour into, the up and coming, owner. So just take him up on that. That's what I would say there. But you can avoid costly mistakes in your business, right? And I'm sure there's ones that have cost you hundreds, there's ones that have cost you thousands, and there's probably ones that have cost you tens of thousands, if not even more, right?
Right.
And so, like, why wouldn't you want to get that insight for free, right? And it probably doesn't even cost a beer to get that story out of Roland. He's probably pretty open. But I think you were talking about, in a way too, right? As you grow older in the profession, right? And you've mastered the service side, you've mastered the install side, you've kind of maybe mastered, managing your people, right? It's that question of, like, most of us as owners, right? Like, we like it because it's challenging, and we like the idea that we have to continue to grow in our spot. And then, but you can get to a point where you feel maybe a little bit kind of, complacent, or you're just kind of dealing with the same thing. Like you said, going in and engaging at that level, and maybe you're starting to look back over your shoulder and saying, hey, how do I leave a legacy? Well, maybe your kids don't want to buy the business from you, right? Or they're not coming up. We know how many people are, chasing those Silicon Valley dreams when, putting on a blue collar shirt, could actually net you a very, very significant income and a very good legacy. I mean, some of these companies that are getting sold, I mean, it's pretty attractive what you're actually earning, as opposed to, drifting from one.com to the next. So I think there's that personal growth aspect of like, hey, this is a new personal growth frontier. Not only pouring into, tomorrow's owners, but also getting in front of Congress, right? Getting on and trying to learn all that kind of stuff, right? That's a great area to kind of to learn some more stuff. But yeah, I think there's so many components that are pretty fascinating that really you don't think of when you think of TACCA. You probably think it's just one more badge I can put on my website right next to the BBB and the PHCC, right? Like, so you just kind of like check that box, but there's much more available there, and that can be a big growth place.
Absolutely. And it makes you feel good when you give advice to another contractor that didn't think about it that way. And I'm not going to tell you that, that we don't go to meetings and I don't pick stuff up from them. It might be a guy who is just doing it differently. And it's like, oh, wow, why didn't I think of that? And then I bring it back to the office, right? And I tell them, hey, this is what I heard. And, it makes changes, and it's for the better. So there's always something you're going to pick up. I mean, it's almost like any class you go to, right? It doesn't always benefit you 100%, but if you're listening and you're paying attention, there's certain things you can grab from each one of those, seminars, classes, or whatever you went to. And I feel the same way every time I go to a TACCA meeting. Is there something I'll pick up? And it may not even be what the presenter talked about. It was what the guy next to me was telling me, that really was a benefit to me.
Yeah. I mean, again, you just got to have open ears, right? And willingness to kind of be open there. Well, Roland, since I got you here, maybe what would you say are kind of some insights, or, as you're looking back on those, 32 years, in the industry, and then the 30 with Stan, maybe some advice to, a new up and coming, HVAC owner, or maybe maybe this is something that happened recently, right? And this kind of, as in the last maybe 5 years, right? You're between 45 and 50, right? Like what would you say are maybe some big milestones? I mean, I figure I might as well share some of that wisdom you got stored up there. And maybe there's a couple of things that, people hadn't thought about that might be, good advice or wisdom.
I think one of the biggest things would be something that every contractor needs to think about. And that's when you're looking at your employees' retention and trying to bring people on, and everybody wants to get a technician that you can just put into a truck.
Right.
That's not always going to work, especially when you're not seeing that many folks coming. So maybe change the game a little bit. Maybe hire from the schools. Because one of the benefits is they have no so basically, if you hire them from the school, they know the basics. They have no bad habits. Because as in the management side, we hire every year, right? And it's either a guy that's got 10 years or 15 years experience. You bring him on, you pay him a high wage, then you find out they really had 10 to 15 different times of 1 year of experience and didn't really have the experience they were telling you. So if you bring a guy on and you actually have a person, like we have a person in-house, Mickey, who has gone through the ranks, very, very technical guy, very smart. He is our field service manager, but every year he brings about 4 to 5 guys on right out of school. He teaches them the Stan's way. There are maintenance guys, and they're being taught, because maintenance is brand new equipment normally, right? Or equipment that is not broke, but you're checking the capacitors, you're checking the motors, you're checking all the wiring, you're cleaning the condenser coil, you're making sure the evaporator coil is clean, you're checking filters, the whole 9 yards, right? that's a guy that if he knows the basics, he can take care of that real easily. And running through it within a year to 2 years, he's going to figure out how to do troubleshooting, because there's going to be
Yep.
sometimes something doesn't come back on.
Yep.
And that's going to be your technicians.
Hmm.
They're already going to know your way. You're giving them that chance. And
Yeah.
normally those guys stay with you longer than the guys that you're hiring and bringing in that, may tell you they got 15 years of experience. Now, I'm
Yeah.
not saying that you're not going to find a jewel every now and then,
Sure.
because that does happen.
Yep.
But right now that we're having so many issues with, trying to find applicants that are ready to work,
Yeah.
I would tell you that's one of the things we changed that has helped us tremendously, is by, bringing in folks that didn't know, and we trained them our way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like I'm also hearing this a lot, in our industry, is like you almost want to hire for attitude, and then you train for the technical skills, right? And that's
Exactly.
not to say like you can't just like pick anybody off the street, but like you're saying, if somebody knows the basics, right? They're coming out of a school, right? I think there's this misconception, if you will, that things are easier when you hire somebody with experience. Like you're saying, though, is like, in the stats, like 50% of people lie on their resume, right? So like even what they're handing you is not probably very accurate, right?
Yeah.
But like you're saying, somebody coming out of school is a blank slate, and it allows you to instill your processes, your procedures, your ethics, into somebody that's got the right, because like training somebody's attitude when they're 15 years into the industry, they kind of got their attitude right, and
Right.
hopefully it's a good one,
Yeah.
but most likely it's probably not, right?
Yeah.
They're jaded, they've seen some stuff, right? And so like you're saying, that's your opportunity to really train somebody up. And then the misconception, I would say, is like, which one takes you more time? I think some people can go, well, training up that new guy is going to take more time. Well, I mean, it's going to take time. I mean, hiring anybody is going to take time, right? Because even the new, even the more experienced person, you still got to train them on your procedures and all that stuff. But like that could be the rotten apple that really sours a lot of other relationships. You could lose a couple of key relationships as a result. That person could cause, financial, damage as a result of like installing stuff the way they used to, and they're not doing
Right.
your own things. And I think also too, there's really no loyalty other than the financial aspect of, hey, we're paying this guy a lot of money, that's why he's loyal to us. Whereas you take somebody who's fresh out of the school and you give them the first opportunity, right? Like I think there's always sort of, I mean, there's a reason why you came back to Stan's, right? Like it's kind of like your first love in a way. And if they treat you right, and you see a lot of things that you like in terms of the trajectory, and they're investing in you, why wouldn't you want to stay with a company that's willing to do that and continue to move you from that maintenance side and then the service side and to the installation side, and like just continuing to grow your skills and rounding you out? Like, I mean, I
Absolutely.
think that's where you can really gain some ground. I mean, correct me
That's
if I'm
how.
wrong.
No, you're spot on. I mean, that's why I have put 30 years here at Stan's, was because Stan Johnson, Robert Buckingham, back in the day, they were the ones who gave me the opportunity, and like I told you, I let the smoke out of some motors. I burned up some stuff, but they knew that I was green, and I came in, and they taught me. They taught me. They sent me to schools. They sent me to training, and I'm still here even though they're not, because I wanted to keep the legacy of the Stan Johnson moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and to that point, right? Like, let's say that you're one of those older gentlemen. You're like, man, I just don't have the leadership, or I'm not there. I mean, like, then go join a group and be around more people like that, and that stuff will rub off on you, right? You'll
Oh
kind
yeah.
of see that in action, and I mean, I think again, you'll realize the disparity is not that much, and I think that will breed confidence in you to kind of maybe step up and just realize it. And like, I'm sure that the Stands, they were to you, they probably weren't perfect, right? They probably screwed some stuff up too, right? And as long as I think you're open about it, obviously not airing your dirty laundry per se, but just at least being, honest about, hey, Roland, I've let some smoke out of some mirrors too. Like I'm not perfect, right? I think that goes a long way for the youth to realize like, oh, okay, like this is all part of it, right? So
Absolutely.
love
Absolutely.
it. What yeah, any other gems of advice? I mean, I think that's a great one, especially
Well,
since that's what our industry struggles with the most right now, is hiring good talent.
And the reason that, that I bring that up is because I see some really sad stories, where
Mm.
we have these smaller contractors who they're like, man, I just can't find help. And,
Yeah.
I'm having to do this install, or I'm having to run these service calls. And I'm thinking, how much are you per hour?
Yeah.
You think you can't afford to have a training program in your company, but
Yep.
really you're paying for it already by you
Hmm.
being in the field doing the work,
Yep.
when you could have somebody doing that for you and making more revenue, having you be the lifeguard that's not in the pool all the time and actually work on your business to make it grow.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that, right? Kind of getting out of your own way, right? I think especially as business owners, man, it's like if we don't do it, it's not going to get done right. And just realizing, I was just listening to a mentor of mine talk about the fact that, like, have you ever gone somewhere and had good customer service? It's like, well, yeah, I've gone to plenty of restaurants or whatever, and it's like, okay, then there's other people out there who can do a good job at it, right? Like you don't have to freak out, right? Like your DNA is not so unique, right? And I mean, you
Exactly.
also probably wouldn't have as many strong competitors in the space if there weren't people to find, right?
Yep.
And if, yeah, I mean, if you were God's great, blessing to HVAC, then you'd probably be the only one in business, but you ain't. So
Not. Yep. You're not. And just that our industry, the equipment from refrigerant efficiencies, everything's changing.
yeah,
Even through the 30 years of doing, 32 years of doing this, I'm
yeah,
learning every year,
yeah,
because I don't care who you are, you'll be very smart, you'll understand our industry, you'll understand air conditioning, but you'll never know it all, because
yeah,
everything continues to evolve. There's more changes coming on, from DOE changing everything just the beginning of this year, on how we test equipment, the manufacturer does. So all our SEER ratings and EAR ratings dropped.
yeah,
These are things that if you didn't know, I mean, these are things that you're gonna know when you're part of TACCA, because these are things we talk
right,
about. These are things that we say, hey, are you ready, in your company with the new SEER change, with the equipment
yeah,
that's coming? Sometimes there were some meetings where people didn't even know that there was going to be all this equipment
mm,
change. But man, these are things you got to know, because you're going to miss the boat. You're going to install equipment that you shouldn't even be selling anymore, which luckily that's all over with. We shouldn't have to worry about it. January 1st
yeah,
of 23 was when that deadline came.
uh-huh,
By now, no one should be installing anything that was
yeah.
the old stuff. So we should be good.
Well, and I think what you're saying too, right? I think so much, especially as an entrepreneur and a business owner, right? So much of what we do is like reactive, and we're always constantly like, oh man, I hate feeling like I'm always on my heels, right?
Right.
And I think, like you said, being a part of an association like this, like you've got canaries in the coal mine coming back and feeding you the information, so that like when because I'm sure that whatever, all the guidance that happened on the 1st of January, like that was probably stuff that probably 18 months, 24 months
Absolutely.
out, people knew about it, right? And it's a way for you to like slowly bring in this change into your organization, as opposed to, you know, one of your guys installs a system, January 31st, and, some homeowner, who's an engineer by trade goes, hey, wait a minute, isn't this against the law? And you're going, whoop, right? Like that's not a good place to be, right? Because then like overnight you're trying to like change an organization, and you probably got inventory issues or whatever, right? Like, yeah, if you just stuck your head in, or I would say even read the email newsletter that you guys probably send on a regular basis, you'd probably be more in the know than just continuing to be an ostrich burying your head in the sand. So
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah, because we had all kinds of meetings, like you said, 18 months prior, to
yeah,
just with Train, Linux, Carrier, bringing them in to talk to
yeah,
contractors, to let them be aware that, hey, these are some changes that are coming. If you stock equipment, you need to make sure that, if you're new construction, you better look at your forecast, see how many houses are going to be up to December 31st, because after this, you don't have much of a grace period. So
yeah.
there was a lot of strategy, that went behind all this, that we had to make sure that we weren't stuck with equipment.
Well, and I think to your point of what you're saying, right, is you guys are bringing in the resources, right? So like, I mean, it doesn't matter what size dealer you are, like, trying to get, Carrier or Train or, anyone out, right, to
Yep.
like train up your team. Like not as likely as them coming to, you know, a local chapter or something like that and giving that information. Again, you just think about all the time you save from like having to like coordinate something like you guys are all doing that for them. They just got to show up, put their butt in the seat, and maybe they've got, you know, a couple of the people in the organization there as well, right? Like there's so much time savings, I think, in a capacity like that, right? You guys are filtering through all the noise and all the rumors and all the hearsay that's out there. You're a trusted organization, and they know that they get the information they're getting from you is actually stuff that's like actionable items, right?
It's value for sure. It's value.
Yeah.
We're not going to give you something that is not a value. I mean, maybe this guy's a commercial contractor and this is more for residential, or this, you know, it is something for commercial and the residential doesn't really value much from it. But I mean, we're all still in the same organization. So at the end of the day, it benefits us all.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Well, Stan, sorry, Stan, I've been staring at your Stan thing
It's
the whole
all good.
time, Roland.
It's all good.
Yeah, any other things that you would kind of say as we kind of wrap up here, or anything that you feel that's maybe on your heart about, you know, talking to that next generation, or maybe the current generation that's, you know, in the leadership positions?
You know, other than this industry has been great to me.
Yeah.
You know, I've been able to put one child through college. I've got two more that are, you know, getting up there that won't be an issue. That luckily that if you think that this industry, as a guy who started off as an installer, went into a service technician's role, then into sales management. I mean, you know, this is a really good industry when you put everything forward to it and really do the best that you can with an organization, whoever you're with, to do the right thing. Humble yourself at times, because there is times that you got to do that. You know, you said sometimes there's, you know, I bet there was $1,000 mistakes. Oh yeah. I mean, you know, there's been where a complete system we put in because we made a mistake. And I can't tell that consumer, because I made a mistake, that you owe me this. No.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, that customer has told their neighbors, their relatives, that this company will do the right thing even when they make a mistake. And that goes a long ways. So I would tell you, don't ever, you know, own up to your mistakes. It'll come back tenfold. Trust me. It's a good thing when you humble yourself and you actually do the right thing for the consumer.
Wow. Thank you, Roland. I appreciate that. I think ending on a very positive note there is important, right? We have a very strong and vibrant industry. It will continue to be so, with, you know, organizations and associations like yours continuing to fight for us. And then I think also too, right, like that's my world, right? Is, you know, because not only will they verbally tell it, if they put it online in the form of a review, right? Like that thing is literally working for or against you 24/7, 365. And I think, to your point, right, you know, the first thing is, for that review to be good, you gotta own up and you got to be responsible and you got to come through. And, you know, I always tell my clients, right, as we're responding to a review like that, is, you know, even if it's a bad situation, because sometimes you won't even know it's a bad situation until it's a review online. Now, provided, hopefully you realize that it's important to put systems and processes in place so that you're catching that stuff before it gets on online in that capacity, right? Is that, you know, those are golden opportunities, right? Like, as much as they feel like a black eye, like that's your opportunity actually to kind of step it up and really show who you are at your heart and what your customer service is. Because everybody can respond to a positive review, but responding to a negative review or a negative situation in the proper way, that will actually create raving fans for you that, you know, although you don't go out intentionally making those blunders, because that was probably not an intent, like, hey guys, I have an idea, right? Like, it's going to cost us quite a bit of money, but I think it's really going to help in the long, is that you come out with that philosophy, those people will continue to share and rep the brand very, very well for you guys. So with that, Roland, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, or get more information about TACCA, like what would you kind of recommend, or what would be next steps for somebody to kind of to move and engage, you know, in our industry in that capacity?
We can, you know, so I can always give you my email. I would tell you, you know, TACCA State has Keith Gatewood is our executive director, you know, so just in case I'm not, you know, the president because we all move through the
Yep.
channels, right? And then the presidency seat moves. So I would tell anybody to always, reach out to Keith or Cindy over at the
Okay.
TACCA office, and
Okay.
that's TACCA.org. Keith Gatewood and Cindy Lopez. So either one of those, if you reach out to them and you want to get a hold of me, they will get an email out to me. If they will call me and give me a phone number, if you left a phone number, I will call you back. Stan's Heating and Air Conditioning, Roland Arrisola, is another way you can get a hold of me.
Yeah.
But I'm here to speak to anybody. I'd love to help anyone that I could with any questions or concerns, or even if they had any issues, just wondering what all is it about to be a member, and they just had questions and wanted to talk to a contractor. I would love to talk to you.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Roland, again. Appreciate your time. I love how you kind of said, hey, reach out to the executive director, go to TACCA.org. Cause yeah, my hope is that this stays in the YouTube sphere and the podcast sphere. And maybe there's people listening to this 10 years from now, and they're the next generation, right? And they're getting inspired to join TACCA and continuing to further the mission. So I love that. So again, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you. And as always, we're wrapping up another episode here of the Reputation Igniter podcast. We're so grateful that you joined us. Hopefully you got an immense insight out of Roland Arrisola from TACCA. And now you're maybe getting a little bit more engaged and say, how do we really further and better our industry? So definitely encourage you to plug in to your local chapter. And from there, just create some great waves in our industry and really pave that path forward. So again, if you've enjoyed the episode, like, subscribe, turn on those notifications. If you would really, the big thing, my life is all about reviews, and that's what I help my clients with. So any review that you would be willing to leave on the podcast platform would be immensely helpful to getting this podcast out to more of your brethren and sisters out there in our industry, and getting them access to the resources as we continue to bring on industry leaders and just the main key resources that maybe you're not aware of because you're so head down in your business and just trying to make it work and scaling it and providing for your family. We want to make sure that we give you everything that we possibly can. So with that, we're wrapping up another episode, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.